There, I like it.
Hello and welcome to Hey, We Like Your Pod, and we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I am not joined by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett, because he's on vacation. But tonight we have our annual, what is becoming a tradition on Hey, We Like Your Pod, our mental health check-in for football fans. So welcome to Steve and Jamie for joining me again this year. It's so nice to see you both. How are you? Let's start with Jamie. How was your week?
It was
so
good.
far?
Busy. So far, it's been busy week for me at work.
Busy at work. Okay. How's your kitty?
He's amazing. He's inside my my dresser, inside one of my little cubbies. I left the door open, and he just jumped in there right now, and he's just sitting inside where I store my clothing, and it's just random. He does random things sometimes.
Yes,
he's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Hi. You heard me talking about him.
That's fantastic. And we are talking about Pepe LaFleur, who was named for Coach LaFleur, but who now has a new mom and a new name. So we're going to talk about that a little more later. Steve, it's so good to see you. Hi. How was your week? How are you doing? What's new?
I'm doing pretty good. The week was good. I took Monday off and spent it all day with the kids, so that was a lot of fun. We did. Went to the pool. Joined a gym by me that now has a pool, indoor, outdoor. So it's really cool. They enjoy it a lot, and they cater to children because they have like liquid. They have drinks that have gummy worms in them and all sorts of stuff outside. And of course, they cost $4 a piece. But yes. It's fun. It's been fun. We went to a parade on Tuesday for July 4th with all my family. Their barbecue after that, and so we're doing good. I'm back to work, and things are going well. So therapy today. That's always a good thing. So
always a good thing. Thankful for any mental health support that we can get, man. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but for those of you who don't know, Steve is part of the Pack-A-Day crew on Wednesday, and I just happened to listen to Wednesday. I know it's Thursday. I'm a day behind. This whole year, I'm a day behind, I think. But I was just fascinated with your conversation with Matt Schneidman. That was so great, Steve. It was a great episode. Super interesting to hear his insights behind the scenes a little bit from what he can tell, what he can tell, and his perspective on things. Jamie, did you catch that one yet? The podcast from Wednesday, Pack-A-Day?
No, I've been very disconnected from Packers World. I watched some clips here and there on YouTube. I usually live on YouTube, but only usually in the shorts. Very short form content.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I will be back. I just need the season to start, and like the spirit will I'll get activated again.
I wish you guys would go on YouTube too. I'm going to put that request in for Andy.
Are you guys not on YouTube?
No, Andy is.
Andy does his daily YouTube like video, and then whenever he's not around, then he either finds a replacement or we'll do a YouTube video. But we normally keep it to the audio stuff for just all of us. We've talked about doing something like this. It's always difficult just because we record on like Tuesday nights, and then the episode gets released on Wednesday morning, and so it's always something. But man, like Matt's always it's so much fun, and I feel like this is now the third or fourth time we've had him on.
Yeah,
and he brings so much information, and he's fun to talk to, man. He's got a good a good sense of humor, like he's humble. He's not like thinking that he's better than anybody because he actually covers the Packers all the time.
Right.
He'll sit down with us and just and shoot the. I forget. Can I swear on this podcast?
We're a family show.
Family show. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah. He'll
good to
shoot
know.
the breeze with us. He'll shoot the
There
breeze
you
with
go.
us. But yeah, it's always a good time, and this one was especially fun because Sarah at the end of it asked him like, "Well, what's your favorite story from the Packers that not too many people have heard?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've got a bunch for off the record that I can share." He's like, "I can't really think of anything too crazy right now that's on the record that I can share." And so,
Right.
after the podcast was over, Matt sat with us for a good 20 minutes and just told us so much stuff. Like, it was like we were all sitting there like kids on Christmas morning, like, "Oh, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more." And he just doing awesome. It was a lot of
Oh, I love it. I love it. He's got a great sense of humor. I loved when I can't remember, I think it was you asked him if he has any summer shows that he's binging or anything. And then he kind of had that lead up and the ups and downs and the emotional, the scary. And then he's like, yeah, it's Yankees baseball. And so it was cute.
That's his jam.
He's super fun. He's super fun. You can tell he's he wants to be doing things. He's got all this time off right now that he was forced to take, and you could just tell he's kind of wired, to be moving around. So, well, cool. Well, we're going to talk about maybe pick up a little bit from our conversation a year ago, but for those who are joining us for the first round, we're not going to just leave you in the dark. We're going to try and do a little bit of catch up. But so Jamie, you've had quite the year. You've made some, as we know, Jamie has ADHD. You're very open about that, right? And you talk openly about it. You have your own podcast. And since we had our last episode a year ago, you have your first apartment on your own. You now have an emotional support animal, which was quite the journey. And that is Pepe LaFleur. And so we're not going to go into how that all happened, but Pepe was adopted by me. And then he needed a home because Tosh had health problems. And now Jamie is his mom, and she couldn't be happier. So Jamie, what was the first thing? What was it that told you that you felt like how you would benefit from having an emotional support animal, and that being a cat? How did you decide that would be good for you, and what were your fears?
Yeah, probably because of TikTok, all the cat videos. They really sold me. I always thought I wanted a dog, but I don't know. I love all animals. I've never been like a cat or a dog person. I just thought like, oh, I could take a dog hiking and stuff. But they were just a little bit too much work for me. I work a lot. For me, it just seemed easier. I feel like cats are a little bit more low maintenance, kind of. They are, but they aren't, because this guy, he's not really low maintenance, and he hasn't been low maintenance. Like the first month was really rough with him, but yeah, he's amazing. And before I moved out of my parents' house, that was one of the reasons I wanted to leave my parents. I had a million reasons, but like one of them was that my mom used to hate cats. She loves him like to death. Okay. She used to hate cats. And so I knew that if I wanted a cat, I needed to leave because she was just like not about cats.
Right.
My biggest, I didn't think about any fears, to be honest. I didn't, other than affording it. Probably if it was like, can I afford to have a cat? Like I'm going to move out. I'm going to have to pay rent and bills and all that stuff. Like, can I even afford it to like raise a little cat and like feed him and stuff? But so far so good.
Yeah. Were you afraid that you'd be able to take care of him? Like just not just financially, but just mentally be able to handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really kicked in closer to you and I like talking about me taking him.
Right.
Because I don't trust myself. I have like a lot of trust issue with myself because historically, I've had some kind of pet, like I had like a fish, for example, or like a bird. And I did have like kind of a negative experience with I was really obsessed with beta fish, and I took care of them for a really long time. Then I got really depressed and I stopped taking care of them and they died. So, and that was very traumatic because I really love those fish a
Yeah.
lot. And the fact that I couldn't take care of them, and I told myself I was just one, I was never gonna get another beta fish. I just wasn't gonna get any more pets because I was like, clearly I'm not capable of taking care of a freaking fish. Like, why would I even be able to take care of another of like a bigger animal? So yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The smaller, the more delicate. I could see that. You know, I don't think you've ever shared that with me. Jamie and I.
It's embarrassing. I don't really share. That's the first time I open up about it.
Jamie and I talk. We still do, but when she was going through this decision-making process and then the preparation and then getting the cat, we must have 6 million texts going back and forth and phone conversations for hours and hours and hours. And I don't ever remember hearing that story.
I don't tell that. It's really embarrassing. My fish died.
Oh my gosh. Well, they're known to do that, I guess.
I feel like a lot of people have fish that have died.
Yeah, it's
He's
pretty.
my baby.
It's not that hard to kill a fish. I mean, really, it's not hard at all. But yeah, but the smaller the animal, I think the more delicate, really. But at least you don't have to walk the cat outdoors.
This is true.
They're inside.
You have to
right?
play with them. Have to play
Yes.
with them.
Yes. So, okay, so let's just continue with you for a second on this. So, you wanted a cat. You got your apartment. You weren't sure if you were ready, and then all of a sudden,
I was gonna wait 6 months.
Yeah, and then
like
all
the
the
6 month mark. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then suddenly I found out that Pepe's foster home was in flux, and he needed to move by April. So let's see, it's July, so it's been a few months.
And on the second.
All right, and then so you had some challenges with your land, with figuring out how to deal with this with your landlord, right? So what did you first?
Yeah, I was.
What did you first
when
do?
I moved in, I saw that it was he said no pets. That was just like on the lease, and I was aware and conscious that the lease said no pets. But everyone's like, don't worry about it. Like, go and find an apartment that says no pets because you can still do an ESA. You can do an emotional support animal. So I was like, okay, but I was really trying to like financially prepare for him. But then you texted me that one day about Moon, and I was in the middle of a medication transition, so my ADHD was like out of control. I was super impulsive, like severely impulsive. And I impulsively texted my landlord, can I have a pet? Like, just like randomly like that. The worst way to ask, literally the worst thing. And I really like complicated things a little bit more. And like Dawn literally saved my life by providing me a really good resource. But yeah. Don't
I remember when you did
your landlord that.
Yeah. I remember when Jamie did that. And so this is a good lesson for somebody who might have ADHD, who might, whether it's for an emotional support animal or for another reason. But so Jamie did something that, most people would do. Hey, can I get a cat? Right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But there is a little bit more strategy involved when you know that it says on the lease, no pets. So you got to be a little more delicate. So when she did that, I was like, you did what? Talk to your landlord. But just the caveat
like, no.
Yeah, no. And then I was like, of course he said no. I would too. But the caveat here, so for those of you who are listening who don't live in California, we have some very special laws here in this state regarding mental health and emotional support animals. We're very, very blessed to have that here. Not everybody has that. And so I was familiar with that because I have a cat, and my lease said the same thing. So, and then it was actually my maintenance woman was like, why don't you get a kitten? And I'm like, what? And she said, everybody here has a cat. And I'm like, what? She's like, we live in California. They really can't keep you from having an animal. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did some research.
Done.
Yeah. So Jamie, you did well, because what you mentioned is you're impulsive with ADHD. You were in the middle of medication changes and stuff, but I really commend you because you relied on not just me, but the resources that I had, the lawyer, the people who were experienced with this, so they could write everything up for your landlord and get everything done properly. And so now you have a cat. But a lot of times, Jamie, and this is the last question, we're going to pivot for a minute to Steve. Do you find with ADHD, and you have other diagnoses as well, or is ADHD the main primary?
Yeah, I have several disorders on there that qualified me for ADHD. I
So-
also have accommodations at work and everything.
Right. So would you like to share what they are?
Yeah, it's a combination of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, which I think is actually CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is like a accumulation of trauma from like your really young formative years up now, and ADHD. Also dyslexic and possibly dyscalculia. I'm all kinds of messed up.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we're doing
Okay. No, that's great, because for anyone who's listening who might have any one of those or number of those things. So my question is, do you find it hard? Did you find it hard to, or do you in general find it hard to rely on people, even when you know they have your best interests in heart, they know more than you do? Is it still hard to let go and trust? Because you did with me, really, very well. You delegated very well. So I'm just curious if that's difficult for you.
I don't trust people very much. I'm currently in a very recluse hermit stage of my life. It's been socializing is very difficult for me, and it's been
Right.
since the pandemic. It got worse, and then I got off social media, and it got worse for me even more. And you're literally the only person I would talk to, like, besides my family, for the longest time. Like you and Ronald, like you're the only people that I would talk to, because I couldn't just talk to people for some reason. I just have, and I still struggle with that. I'm trying to work on it. So in a way, you almost like that whole interaction really saved me from a lot of things, because I would have just probably like pivoted into like even darker thoughts.
Wow.
Can I just ask, does interacting with people, does it like just basically drain your battery, your mental battery completely?
Yeah, it's a combination of like social anxiety and feeling overwhelmed, overstimulated, rejection sensitivity. There's like a combination of a lot of things why I struggle so much.
I was just curious. I work in sales, and so I'm very much introverted. But when I go out and I interact with people, I have to like be on. I have to have that fun, like bubbly personality. And as soon as I get back in the car, it's like I'm exhausted already. I'm like, okay, I've got like 10, 15 minutes before I can go back out and talk to the next person. But like, I need that time just for myself,
Right.
just to get it back. But yeah, like,
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
That's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah. I have a very difficult time trusting people, delegating, and super introverted, and certainly can relate to the pandemic making it worse. I was just talking to one of my best friends about this yesterday. I would be happy never leaving the apartment again. Just don't care. I'm not, got my cat. I'm just like, the world is getting scarier. So much trauma. Well, that's interesting, Steve. For about 4 years, I had a pretty high level sales executive position. And the funny thing is, it was like 20 years ago, and I just got a call from somebody looking for me. I still have the same cell number. And
I still get calls from my last sales job like 3 years ago, and they're like, "Hey, we haven't gotten our garage pressure washed." I was like, "Yeah, that's been like 3 to 4 years that you haven't gotten that washed."
Yeah,
I'll refer you over, but like, what's going on here?
Well, I can kind of understand, because the type of thing that I sold were capital sales, so it wasn't the kind of thing that people buy very often. It's like major investments for companies.
Sure.
But I recognize her name, I recognize the company, and I was like, wow. what are those people doing over there that nobody has called on them and they
No
don't
updated
know?
contact info.
Yeah. But thankfully I have thankfully because of social media, you have friends from years and years back that came back into your life. So I had like 4 people that were more recently with the company who could help them, and
That's good.
I'm like, hey, I put out like a little group text. Can somebody help Kathy? It's been 19 years since I left.
Do I get a commission for this or what?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's funny. But I had the same experience. You have to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people think you're an extrovert when you're like that. And they expect you to be on all the time. And it's like, no, I really don't.
Oh, I mean, it's a skill. Like it literally legitimately is a skill that you can I've figured out how to turn on when I need to.
Yeah.
Like being on a podcast. So you want to be bubbly, you want to be fun. And I guarantee as soon as I'm done here, I will like turn this computer off. I will snuggle with my dog.
Yeah.
And that'll be good. I don't want to talk to anybody probably for the rest of the day.
Yeah, you and your dog. So you have you have a dog, maybe not technically an emotional, but probably is an emotional support dog, right?
He is not qualified as that, but yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I legitimately was laying with him on the floor tonight and was talking to him and like, dude, you're my best friend.
I love that.
And I was like, holy crap, I just said that out loud. Okay.
I love that so much.
He's awesome. He's my dude. And since I moved to the new apartment in May, I got him full time in June. And it's been really, really great. Like even my ex was just like, he's your dog. Like he loves you. Like it's not a question about who he loves more. She's like, he loves you the most. And so he wanted to be with me. And so he's he doesn't sleep with me in bed, which I'm okay with, but we always do the little dance of at about 5 to 6 a.m. He will jump in bed and then he does his little like, hey, good morning. And then he starts taking his nose and starts sticking it under my blanket. And that's his code. That's his code for saying like, I'd like to get under the covers, please. So sometimes it happens. Sometimes I'm like, nah, dude, like I'm good. But yeah, he's Ollie's my guy. Like and I would say like when you guys were talking about, how having a pet helps mental health, like he gets me out of the house multiple times a day, like 3-4 times a day. We go out. Yeah. The new apartment's got some good walking paths and stuff. And so we go out on walks and it's really good for me.
I love it. How old is Ollie?
He is roughly 7. When we got him, they said he was about a year old, and they said from the rescue that he was, what was he? A boxer lab mix. And like, for me, I was like, I don't see that. He's got he's got boxer in him for sure. And I kind of started doing some research and stuff and found out boxer coonhound is much more accurate. Ooh. So he thinks he's a human. Like he will talk to you and like he's got like a little howl down, like it's like he's having a conversation. That's awesome. The
coonhound howl. Wow. Coonhounds are cool.
Yeah.
They're really cool.
So I would love to find out exactly what he is, but I'm not gonna pay like $90 to do the like saliva test to figure out what type of breed exactly he is. Yeah, I'm like, I got a good idea. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I have a standard issue spotted tabby. Hi, Tosh. She's looking at me right now. But I still want to do that DNA testing. Wisdom panel.
If anybody ever wants to gift me one, I will do it in a heartbeat.
Sure.
But I just don't want to I don't want to spend my own money on it.
I will one day. Jamie and I talked about
I know. I want to find out what moon is next.
What he is.
Ragdoll. I need to know.
He seems to, Jamie's is blue eyes. It's a long hair black cat with blue eyes, which is pretty rare. So Pepe's very special. I still call him Pepe, but Grandma can do whatever she wants because she's a grandma. So Steve
call him Moon.
He calls him Moon. Yep. And Ronald is here with backing up the Moon crew. Hi, Ronald. So, Steve, you've had a lot of big changes since a year ago, some big life changes. Would you like to share some of that with us?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I moved into a new apartment about a month and a half ago, which has been really, really cool. It's a much more peaceful place than the last place I was at.
Ah,
Um, so the last place I was at, I went through a divorce and was just trying to find an apartment that was at least close to home,
yeah,
uh, to where the kids were going to be, and that
yeah,
was an important thing. And so I was thrown into the apartment market where I had never been in the last like 15 years,
right.
and things have changed quite a bit. I found out. So basically, I found the closest place. I lost the first two places, and then I was like, okay, I just got to find a place. And so it served its purpose. And I was out of the house. It was got me my own space, but the next time around, I knew I didn't want to stay there for another year. And so I started looking around and ended up finding this place that's in the kids' school district. And it's about 5 minutes from their school, which is awesome. And it's got like greenery. Like the last place I had,
Oh, nice.
the last place I had looked out on the parking lot. And so
Oh,
it was depressing and sad, and I was going through a whole slew of emotions with the divorce and everything. And so this place is it's green, it's got trees and woods, and like I go sit on the porch and there's just birds chirping and grasshoppers, and you're like, my mental health has gotten a million times better just since I've been here, I feel like. Um so yeah, that's been awesome. Work has been going really good.
yeah.
Working on a promotion at this point, so that's really
Ooh.
and some potential changes in my department. So lots of cool stuff going there. The kids are doing really well, and right now we are planning our summer vacation, which should happen in August, where we're going to rent an RV and we're going to go head out to Mount Rushmore and go check that out and swing around for a couple of other places we haven't been determined yet, but yeah, that's my big plans for the summer.
Ooh, that sounds fun. You're going to see buffalo.
Yes, we are going to see
Lots of buffalo.
So we're going to see lots of fun stuff.
That's really cool, Steve. I love it. I'm glad to hear you're doing so well. So let's talk about, and by the way, hello to Pape and Lorenzo, and again to Ron. Nice to see you. Let's talk a little bit more in depth about, and by the way, we're Packers fans. So regardless, if you're a football fan or a Yankees fan or a baseball fan or any sports fan, I mean, I went through some big trauma today and thankfully I wasn't watching it live. I was trying to watch it live, but I wasn't watching it live. I watched tennis. I love tennis. And Andy Murray went down screaming on one of his attempts to hit, but he was able to keep playing. But to see somebody hurt, to see our teams lose, we go through a lot of pressure and stress as fans, but we also have our own private lives. And so that's one of the reasons we like to do this annual podcast, is just to I like to think of this as like when you go to a football game at a friend's house and they're having a big bunch of people over and they've got like a table full of food and people hanging out in the kitchen, having their beverages, going back and forth to the game. And then you get into these conversations like with someone over by the food table, and then you forget the game's on because you're talking about something that's just so intriguing and you're making a new friend and things like that. So this is what this episode is kind of like, don't you think?
Yeah, I always enjoy it's a good conversation. Like we just kind of all are able to free flow and talk about what's going on with us. And
yeah,
I talked with you guys beforehand where sometimes the best way to help people is just to share your own story and be vulnerable and talk about it, because all of a sudden somebody else can hear for the first time, whoa, that person has the same thing going on that I do. And forever you felt alone and you were like, I'm the only person in the world that feels this way. And you find out that you're not.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to talk about because I have severe PTSD, and I think I shared last year what that came from, the event or events, and I'm going to talk tonight about how I can now consciously choose to enter a situation that's triggering, because most people with PTSD, they're going to avoid triggers. They're going to avoid talking about certain things, talking about what happened. But sometimes I'm finding now that I can consciously kind of trigger myself, not on purpose, but to do something else for a greater good. So I'm going to talk about that, but I want to talk about your journey first, Steve. So maybe you could share, because you've also been diagnosed with PTSD, right? Would you like to share a little bit about how that came to be and why, or if you had an event or?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes into a lot of different things. So there's some health issues that happened with my ex that I, not really going to join in. That's her own thing. And so just things that happened from that kind of, it was very, very traumatic for me, the way that the whole event, all the events happened. And so basically, like, what happened was I became kind of like borderline PTSD and became very like anxious, and there was basically a scenario where anytime my phone rings, I have to answer it, like that, because that's how I was given the information of the bad things happening. And so it kind of turned into it just anxiousness and everything. And so I've been taking tests and figured out that it was right on the borderline of PTSD. And so nothing too nothing too crazy, but, not trying to downplay. But honestly, like, my whole story kind of goes a little bit back, childhood. And for everybody who was like, I had a normal childhood. That's what I said forever. I said forever that I had a normal childhood. And honestly, like, I think for the most part I did. But it all affects each person differently. And that's kind of what I'm starting to learn more and more every time I go into therapy, and figuring out of like, no, my parents didn't like purposefully mess me up. No, my parents didn't beat me. They didn't do anything. Like, they didn't do horrible things to me, but just the way that I was raised, and then the way that my brain formed, turned into some weird stuff. And so I was a very typical man. I pushed my feelings down. Anytime those feelings came up, I was like, hey, you know what? Instead of feeling those, I could get drunk. That's a way better option. And I don't have to feel those feelings. I don't want to feel those feelings. And so that's what I did. And for 39 years of my life, that was my answer, was not to feel anything. And it resulted in my divorce. And so that's kind of, it came to be. And all of a sudden I had to look at myself in the mirror, and I looked at myself and I said, I don't like this person. And so I was faced with two options. I was faced with just keep doing what I've been doing for my entire life. I suppose I'll be all right. That was my thought at the time. Or I can really take this deep dive into myself and figure out what the hell's going on. Like, where is this all coming from? And so that's what I did. I finally had enough of not liking myself. And so, yeah, I started going to therapy twice a week, and it was life-saving for me. And so it's been about 2 years that I've been doing it. I've been really diving deep into figuring stuff out. And one of the things that I've kind of enjoyed is that, I'm not out here. I wasn't out to try to like blame people. I wasn't trying to be like, no, it was my parents that screwed me up. It's their fault that this all happened. No, there were choices that I made that this all occurred. And it really was hard to look at myself and realize it. But when I could do that, all of a sudden I realized, well, these are the choices that I made. Okay, why did that happen? And so you start diving deeper and deeper and deeper and start pulling things away. And I started figuring out a lot of stuff. And it's not easy every single day, but I've been given so many tools now of how to, like you said, like going through triggering events, figuring out those ways to react now, as opposed to just like flying off the handle or whatever. It's okay. I take that one extra second and I think about it, and all of a sudden that makes the biggest difference in the world. Of it's not my initial reaction, like, okay, why is this happening, or how should I react to this, or a million different things. And so I like the thing that I've kind of come to realize is that I've multiple times in these 2 years, I'm like, I think I'm good. Like, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm fine. Like, I've got it all figured out. And then all of a sudden, like, something else happens. Like, oh, never mind. I'm not. No. Yeah, we need to keep doing this. So there's always some stuff to work on. Like, I was doing some great stuff today that really helped me. And just in ways to deal with people, like certain situations of how I'm supposed to react versus, or how I want to react versus how I currently react. And so it's really, really cool. And that's why I'm really huge now on talking about this, because it was never anything in my life. Nobody in my life really talked about therapy or anything like that. And so I wanted to, every time I tell the story, I always get somebody else that comes to me is like, thank you. I didn't know that somebody else was going through the same thing I was going through, or it helps. And so I'm huge on wanting to share my story, and because as scary it is to talk about it, it's more important that other people really get some help.
That's fantastic. But I think the point you were making is you don't just fly into triggering situations and be like, okay, I'm just going to drink if this doesn't work out. You're actually consciously thinking about what you're doing, how you're responding, how you're feeling, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
No, it's now I can see those things where, there are certain ways that, I would deal with my parents in the past. And so, that was one of the big things for me was they're like talking with my therapist of like, this is the way that, they make me feel. And they're like, she stops me. She's like, are they making you feel that way? I'm like, no, they're not making me feel that. No, they're not. And so it's the way that you react to certain things. And then one of the other things too was, talking to her about, all these people in my life of how, it's like, this is what they're doing. This is what they're doing. She's like, so do you think they're ever going to change? Like, older people in their late 70s, 80s, however old they are they can change? And you sit there, I'm like, probably not.
No.
She's like, so either you can resent them for the rest of your life, or you can change how you react to them. And I just sat there, I'm like it sounds like a lot of work, but yeah, that's very, very true. And so that was pretty big to me, just hearing that kind of stuff and understanding of just understanding that that's kind of the way that hearing other people's stories and understanding a little bit more of their side of it too, and not just thinking about just yourself and this is the way that they're thinking, but just because of the way that they're thinking, that doesn't mean though that that's the way that I have to be with it. So that's been really good. And I did some really good work today on that type of subject with some other people, and I'm pretty hopeful. But so yeah, just because you think the work is done, it's never done. It's never done.
Right. And Pappy mentioned that in the chat here. She said, life is always a work in progress. It's how you progress that makes the difference.
Oh, absolutely.
And that is so true. And now, Jamie, did you find yourself having to monitor that kind of thing as you went through getting your kitty Moon?
Oh, still do. Yeah, absolutely. I deal with a lot of thought distortions, and what Steve is talking about that I've learned from therapy is just having awareness. Part of the issue is also having too much self-awareness because I internalize it in a negative way. And I start self-loathing, but it's really on the way that you look at it, and it's one of it's a superlative that I'm gonna bring up later on. I'm really learning to like separate myself from that thought. Like your thoughts, it's not like a real, it's just a thought. Sometimes it seems like, oh no, like for example, like if you're scared of doing something, but the fear is irrational. So just removing yourself from that fear and looking at it and separating yourself from it and being aware, like, oh, I'm scared right now. It gives you a chance to work through those tools that you learned in therapy, like what Steve was talking about. So yeah, I'm still working on it. It's a tough thing. I have to constantly bring myself. I'm always talking to myself, like, okay, you're doing this again. Like, oh, you're doing this, and I have to like correct myself.
Well, it's tricky too because we're designed like fear is in us to protect us and keep us alive. So fear isn't necessarily all bad either. But so it's tricky to find that right balance, and we're never going to get it 100% right as humans because
Mhm.
I mean, but when we get it right and where we get it right, like if you in Jamie's case, so let's drill down a little and get a little more specific because there might be somebody who listens to this who really wants to have an animal, but they're dealing with all this stuff and they're just not sure they can. But there's benefits. There's a rainbow at the end, right? So the process, though, was specifically you had doubts, right? And then so what you did was you asked questions, right? You voiced your concerns and your fears, right? With me, I know for sure we had a process, but I know we also, you also did with your therapist, with your doctor, and with others. So you went through, so you bounced those things off of people, and not to say anything was rational or irrational, but just to say how, okay, so maybe this is how I can work through this issue, such as, here's one that's triggering right now for anyone who owns a cat, even though you now have the cat, but just getting the cat in a carrier to get them to the vet. I mean, that can put somebody right over the edge. Have you tried?
It did Saturday. I just had
Exactly. Exactly. But here's the thing. We talked about I think sometimes, and you could tell me if I'm right or not on this, but like Steve was saying, sometimes we think we're the only ones with that problem. And so I will always tell you, no, getting a cat
like
to the
that.
vet is really hard. It's
Yeah,
not
it feels
you.
like you're the only one.
It's not you, though. It's not you.
Yeah.
They're cats.
Yeah, I
But
know.
you figure out ways. Like I mean, what might work for my cat might not work for your cat. Like I did upside down last time. Tosh had an emergency last week. She could have died. I had to get her to the vet. I dumped her into the carrier upside down. I mean, Tosh has put me in the hospital. So I mean, it's like it's serious stuff trying to get a cat. But sometimes your fears were such as before you got Pepe, what if I fail? What if I can't take care of him? What if I can't get him into the vet? What if I can't get him into my car when I pick him up? There were a lot of like a million steps along the way. How did you handle that? Those.
You. Let me tell you, if you're gonna have any like animal or pet or emotional support animal, I would really highly recommend having a mentor
Have a person.
that has had a cat or a dog, whatever animal you want. Be friends with somebody that's had this cat or this animal for a period of time because they know things that you don't know. I mean, I was a brand new cat mother or pet mother.
Yeah.
So Dawn has been super instrumental in managing my anxiety towards being able to, successfully take care of Moon Pepe LaFleur. But yeah, honestly, I've been able to get through it because of Dawn. She's literally
Well,
through
I was not fishing for that answer at all.
No, but it's true.
Just more generally, what you said though, if you're thinking about getting an animal and you're afraid, find somebody who's not just willing to impart information, because I do a lot of that, right? And And I try not to tell you, yeah, this is the answer. I try to give you some choices, right? But also somebody who's willing to deal with your anxiety and not go off, because we need people in our lives, right, Steve, that will not be like, oh, you're just being silly or you're just over the top. We don't need to hear that when we're in the middle of, of something high pressure for us.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
That's not helpful.
But I think something that Jamie kind of talked about a little bit earlier, and it stuck with me, is like the self-recognition of when you understand that your therapy is working. That's one thing to really understand too, is that, you see those, when you start to see those changes in yourself, and like, she was talking about of understanding the things that are going on with the cat. Like that's a huge win. Like you have to be able to celebrate those things when they happen, however big, small they are. Like of understanding, like, my brain is starting to work in a different way than it was before. It's recognizing these situations that previously set me off, and now I see the situation before it happens, and I'm able to react in a different way. Like those things
pull yourself away from this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's really, really huge.
Yeah. That's why I try to always encourage Jamie and say, look what you did. Look at what we did. You went to the vet. She actually was so confident at the vet, she forgot to call me when the doctor came. Normally I'm in the room with them. I'm on the phone. And I was like, I'm going to have some lunch here. I think she's going to handle this on her own. And she did. And, just getting those text messages, Jamie, from you, it's very rewarding to mentor someone too, because it's like, I got him in the case. I got him in the car. We're on our way. She sends me a little picture, so even though you're out there, whoever you are, Jamie, anybody who has a mentor or has a friend, basically, who's helping them, support them in something, you're also doing something for me, for the person on the other end, because it's very gratifying. It's very nice to see you successful in, and being a good mom, and look how far you've come. It's crazy. Like she was a real basket case.
I know, I really was. Like literally the first month was like, I've been seeing this a lot on Reddit, because I've been on social media, but I've been hanging out on Reddit a lot, and I've been seeing a lot of people have, and I didn't tell you this, Dawn, so I'm going to tell you this right now, but I see a lot of people talk about like adoption regret. There was a couple of times where I was crying, I was so anxious, because when I got him, he was a little bit sick. And so that really caused a lot of anxiety on me, and I was like, oh my God, he's sick, like I wasn't like prepared for this, but it was just one of those times where I was just having a really hard day, and I was just beating myself, and I was just having and I was almost regretting getting him, because it's like, how am I going to do this? I feel like at that moment, like you feel like, I'm like, I don't think I could do this. But then like I texted you, or I get on the phone with you, and then like the anxiety just like goes down. I remember when I couldn't get him and I had to cancel my appointment, I cried the whole night because I couldn't get him to the carrier, and I had to cancel my appointment with the vet. And I literally cried the whole day. I went to work and I was like crying to my coworkers. And it's like, yeah, I shouldn't be crying about this, but it's just like, that's just how it happened. And you really had to talk me through that, because I was like, oh my God. And you feel like you're the only one, you're like, that's happened to me. I had to cancel my appointment, and I was like, okay.
Right.
I'm not a failure. Right. I'm not a failure.
Right. Yeah. Just things like, yep, there's a lot of people who have had to cancel vet appointments. It's okay. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's so stressful. I never said, oh, it's no big deal, right? It's very anxiety producing. Now, I also had dogs, Steve. I had over the years, for decades, I had Scottish Deerhounds. They're a giant breed. They're the third largest breed in the world. And most of them really didn't want to go to the vet, and they were usually bigger than me. And then I'd get them there. I don't know how dogs know, but even when I took my one developed a heart issue, and I had to take her to a cardiologist she'd never been before. We get within a mile of the place, and she starts shaking. Like, how does she know? How does she know? And then she'd sit in there and just shake like, oh my gosh, it's so stressful. So no, nobody's if you have a friend telling you, oh, it's no big deal, get another friend. Because I mean, if it's stressful to you, it's stressful to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then so that's not the right answer. It's even if it seems like, oh, it's not something you should be stressed about, your friends shouldn't be saying that. That's not going to help. Somebody said, somebody put this sign up on social media a while back. It said, when in the history of calm down did telling somebody to calm down ever calm them down? So it's the worst thing you can do is just.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point.
Yeah, it's just gaslighting when people do that. It's annoying. So
actually, I had a therapist for a little while. I didn't like him all that much, but he did give me one thing that I really did kind of take away from it. And he was talking to me about expanding my social circle because outside of, some online stuff and a few close friends, I don't go out that much. Like I don't venture too far with like meeting new people. And that's one of the things I'm trying to work on a little bit, but he kind of wanted me to push me and expand my social circle because he's like, you can't go to one person for everything. They don't like, no one person is going to be able to help you out with every situation. He's like, so try to find like one friend that kind of is good in this situation. One friend is good in another situation. Like, so you get 5 or 6 different people that you can trust in your life that you can go to with a certain type of situation.
Right.
And that are good in that situation. Like maybe, I'd call Jamie and be like, dude, I'm freaking out about this thing that's going on. And you'd be like, no, I can't help you with that right now. Like I'm much more good on the like advice about normal stuff. And if I would call you, Dawn, about like, I'm freaking out. Can you help me calm down? And you know how to do that a little bit better. And
right.
So that was one of the, as I said, I didn't like him too much, but kind of that advice of trying to find a couple different people in your life that what they're good at, what kind of friend they can really be for you. Like that was a really cool thing I kind of pulled from him.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's really really practical, actually, advice. Yeah. And by the way, I'm sorry, Pepe. I could tell Pepe was like, why aren't we talking about football? And so Pepe said, I just read the topic. I thought, this convo was because the Packers and the Eagles are the bomb.
I love it.
I mean, feel free to send me some Twitter messages about football. I'll talk all day about it.
Yeah, so that's so funny. Okay, so and Pepe says, I have a feeling that in 2025, Steve will be a therapist. Oh, that might not be a bad idea. That's awesome. Friends are overrated. Good friends are a treasure. True. Yeah, that's right. So I'm so glad you're here, Pepe. And I was just thinking, I had a feeling there was a slight disconnect on what we were talking about. I was just going to say something and I saw that. So thanks for looking in the description. That's great.
So talking about their feelings.
Yeah. This is the annual mental health check-in.
It's like 15 minutes in, they haven't talked about the Packers yet.
We talked briefly.
A little bit.
In the morning. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Can you believe the preseason is next month already? Oh gosh.
Yes,
finally.
I'm excited.
Finally.
Very excited.
Talk about anxiety. It's going to be an interesting year.
I don't feel like anxious for once. I'm excited for football.
I'm so excited too. Yeah, I'm excited. It's kind of like a whole new beginning, and
love a fresh start.
It's awesome. Did you have any sad feelings when Aaron Rodgers left? Steve, Jamie, I know you really like Aaron.
I cried. Yeah, we got here with Janet Wilson from Twitter.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Me, and we saw his announcement on Tag 90. I was crying.
Aww.
I'm fine now.
Okay, good. Steve, any crying on your part?
No, I was more on the opposite side. Like,
me too.
All right, good riddance. Like, like he did a lot of great things for the Packers, and I'll always have awesome memories. But
yeah, I
was really tired of the act. Like, it's just the whole thing. I'm bigger. It felt like Brett Favre all over again. I'm bigger than the team. This, all about him. And, I've recently, kind of figured going through my own mental stuff and figuring stuff out. And there's a lot of narcissism that comes from that man. And so, you start to dive in deeper and understand things about yourself. And all of a sudden you start seeing all these other things. And I'm like, dude, this guy he loves him some Aaron Rodgers loves him some Aaron Rodgers. And
yeah, it's tiring.
Yeah. So, and I know for a fact that Sarah Kelleher is unbelievably excited that she doesn't have to report on the Pat McAfee show anymore. So,
I used to love.
So that's a win. That's a win
that
right there for us.
Win for Sarah. No, I couldn't with that show. I never. But then the fact that she did the rundown for us. I mean, what a gift Sarah is for doing that for us.
Oh yeah. Dusty and I were always excited. We're like, yeah, we're not doing that. She's like, oh, I'll take care of it. Like,
I love it. Okay, Pappy is a hockey guy, not football so much. Respect for the Packers. Yeah, thank you. Packers are just an institution, a historical. Even if you're not a football fan, you got to, which is what I think Pappy was saying. Kind of respect the history there.
I'm laughing at his last comment.
Oh. Brett Favre texted Jamie and asked about building a volleyball court in her backyard. Pappy's always here with the jokes. And for those who are listening on Saturday to the podcast, we have a live chat going here. So if it sounds a little random, Pappy always brings the humor. I love it. Okay. So I too have PTSD. And for those of you who heard the story before, I'll go briefly. I didn't know I had PTSD. It didn't really culminate into anything major in my life until about 12 years ago. What year is it? Like, until I was about 50 years old, and it came on. It felt like it came on overnight, but it really doesn't, but it felt like that to me. And it came on in the form of flashbacks, severe nightmares. And at that time, I couldn't go out. Like I did have a dog at the time. I would walk my dog, and if anything, like a leaf would fall from the tree, I would jump a mile. I mean, any little movement. I stopped driving right away because when I was driving, especially on the 5, but even just on the streets, I felt and we've got like 10-lane highway here. I call it the 5, 10, 12 lanes. And so there's no reason to think this, but I felt like the cars going the opposite way were coming right at me. So I was like, and I had it happened really fast. So I stopped driving. It was just very boom, dramatic. And I went to a psychiatrist and I told them to just put me in a hospital and lock me up because I was going crazy. I didn't know what was happening. And they told me, and there were, and I had therapy over the years. It just helped because I had a high stress life. I always had a lot of stuff going on, and I had severe health problems, and I almost died a few times in my lifetime too. So I just had a very stressful life, and I had therapists my whole life. And so over the years, they would try to talk to me about my childhood, and I'd be like, "Oh, well, I had a great childhood. There's nothing there." And but what we need to talk, And I'd be like, I want to talk about this, that's bothering me right now. And so when I went to that very, very good psychiatrist, not psychologist, because I really thought I was just done for life. Like I was done. I didn't recognize myself. It was really, Pepe LaFleur is on the camera for those watching podcasts. Sorry, you're missing out on Pepe Moon. Hi, Pepe. Hi, buddy. Anywho, sorry. So they said, well, no, I mean, there's notes in your file that you might have PTSD. And So that's when I finally realized, and because of the nature of the nightmares and the content, I realized, okay, this goes back to a childhood memory of when a really, really bad man tried to first run me over with his car and then was unsuccessful because I ditched my bike and ran. And then over several months on and off, which is what stalkers do, stalked me and tried to get me to come with him. He finally was made to leave me alone. And then he ended up getting one of the neighbor girls who was like 5 years younger than me. So she was only 7 at the time. She lived 4 blocks away. She was too young to know better and didn't know. And he got her, and he's still in prison for this. And so one of the things over the years, now that I know what's going on and I know the lay of the land, and like lots of therapy and lots of support from friends, and I have the opportunity when this prisoner comes up for parole, because he's in Wisconsin and they have to give them parole, even though he's life in prison. They don't have the death penalty, which I wouldn't support, but they don't have it. I'm just saying. And then they also don't have no parole, like some states. So some states, somebody like that could easily be put away with no parole because of what he did to her alone, just what he did to her. And so I have the opportunity to write to the parole board. And as a victim, I think I have the opportunity actually now to appear on Zoom or to go, which I haven't done. But over the years, like the first time I had the opportunity to write, because when this all happened, then I did some research and I looked everything up and I got old newspapers and all that. Found out he was still alive in prison, which shocked me, really, because he's really old. Because I'm 62. I'm 62, and he was like, well, 25 years older than me, right? So my mom's age. So, or more. And so I was shocked that he was alive. And that kind of freaked me out. And so, but each time I consciously choose, and I haven't done it every single time, but each time that I choose to write a parole letter, I get really triggered. It's really a lot. But at the same time, I feel the benefit of supporting the girls, and I'm not going to use people's names, the girls' family, her survivors, and my community, who evidently there are a lot of people just from the neighborhood and the community in Racine, Wisconsin, where I was from, who still write to the parole board, even though they weren't victimized. So I have a really strong voice in this, and they're very interested. The parole commissioner is very interested in my story. It's highlighted along, of course, obviously her family is most important, but her family still goes to those parole meetings. And so even though I don't like reliving it, and it really kind of makes me sick for a few days, and there's a lot to it, and I get help from they have a victims unit that helps people like this. They also I have my doctors and friends over the years. Like this year, last month, I was recovering from my surgery, and I got notification that it was time to, if I wanted to prepare a letter or appear or whatever, to address it. And I just was like, this is why I said the topic is consciously triggering oneself in order for a greater good. Even though I was just like, okay, well, I'm stuck in bed anyway. And once I get through this surgery, I'm going to want to be bouncing around, and I'm not going to want to stop and do this. And so I was really not in a great place. I was recovering from surgery. I was medicated, and I just threw that letter together. And so each time over the years that I've had the opportunity to write this letter, it's become easier for me. It's not easy by any means, but it's not like before where I had to have everybody check every word. I would obsess over it. It would take me forever to write it, and then I would like change it around and all of that. But the letter's done, and I have a meeting in a couple of weeks with the commissioner on Zoom, and I feel like whatever I can do to support her family, her loved ones, because they don't want him out on parole. And if that's what they don't want, that's what I don't want. And I don't want it for me either, because I think I would always wonder if he's going to show up. Because so many years I always thought somebody was watching me or following me in a car. And if I would ever see a car of that type of color, it was a silver car with these 2 black like racer stripes, those thick kinds. And it's not often that you see a car like that, but some people restore those kinds of cars and stuff. And if I would see one on the freeway, and this is before I knew I had the PTSD, I would be like, oh, ick, and I would always wonder where he was. And the reason I didn't know that he was in prison is because my mother, who was very well intentioned, was like, oh, no, that's not him, right? That's not him. Because the car, it's really gruesome what happened, but the car that was at the crime scene wasn't the same car. And so she's like, it's not the same car. And by then I was like 11, and I was pretty smart. I mean, you're pretty smart at 11. And I was like, how many people are there like this? Like, you think there's a second guy doing this, mother? And I wanted to go to the trial, and I wanted to, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no. But so for all these years, I thought he was still out there. And that really, when I look back now at some of the things that I've done in my thought process over the years, it's very enlightening. And so even though it's painful and uncomfortable, I don't know if painful is the word, I don't know what word is right, but for anyone who has something that might be buried, even if it was for good reasons, with good intentions, sometimes there are some real great things that come out of uncovering things. And it can be super freeing, I guess would be the best word for it. And there are other things that we can do. Jamie, getting a cat, you consciously triggered a lot of anxiety, right? But there was a greater good, right? And so there are things that we all can do, but we don't have to do it medicating ourselves or drinking or something like that. Like you were talking about, Steve, we can do things, be prepared, find the right support system, which isn't easy. It takes, like you've had to go through a few doctors, right? Everybody has, right, Jamie? So there are so many things that is a major trigger for me. So I thought it would be probably the most impactful to make my point. But there are other things that I do sometimes that are just, it takes a lot for me to do things that people have no idea, because I don't usually share it. They have no idea. And we don't have any idea what other people are going through, right? So I just find it really, when I see somebody doing a Karen or having a bad day or yelling at I'm much more careful now that I know what I know, to not judge anyone or say the wrong thing to maybe put them over the top, because there are a lot of people going through a lot of things. And then lastly, I just want to mention, because you mentioned it, Jamie, too, that the pandemic and having to stay inside when you're already afraid to go outside because you think somebody might grab you or something like that, or health reasons, my immune system is shot, whatever the reasons are, for anyone who's listening, there are a lot of people struggling with this. And don't ever let anyone shame you for finding friends online or doing what you have to do on YouTube to entertain yourself, because at least you're doing that. I mean, I feel like I still have a life, even though I'm even more and more and more careful. The older I get, the more vulnerable I feel and that kind of thing too. But there are things we can do consciously to trigger ourselves. So if you're in a place where you're not ready for that, don't do it. Just don't do it. But if you feel like you want to, I guess the lesson I'm getting from you guys is find the right people to support you in doing it, so that you're not out there just shaking through it or drinking or using drugs or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what you said too was, yeah, one of the big things I've started doing too is writing. Writing is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Is getting your emotions out. And I was gonna ask, like, how many times have you written that letter, Dawn? Now,
I think 5.
okay. And does
it's
it get easier, a little easier every time?
It's less scary. It's less scary, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't go back and look at the previous letters. Okay. I almost did this time, and I was like, oh, I can't find it. Ugh, I don't need to look at it. I just want to,
and that's what you're feeling now. That's like the most important part of it. Like, you'd be like reliving your old experiences while going through your old ones. But it's like you're a different person than when you wrote the last one, than you wrote the first one. Mm-hmm. And like, to me, that's one of the biggest things is, especially it's those things that run through your mind of like, I write them out, and all of a sudden I look at them like, well, that's some messed up stuff that I just wrote. Like, okay, like maybe that's not the thing that I actually am thinking. And maybe my brain isn't doing isn't thinking the thing I wanted to. So, seeing those things actually written down versus just running through your head, it makes a world of difference to me.
Right. It does. And in this one, this example is pretty extreme that I'm giving, but because they need, the commissioner and the parole board, they need details. So, Tashi's here. They need details. Hi. They need details, right? So I have to I can't just be vague.
Relive it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to walk through it. Yeah. I haven't shared this a ton of times, but fairly soon, when I was ready to look into, like, go to the court files and all that, they're like on microfiche, right? They weren't so I had to go to the courthouse in Racine. I couldn't get them sent to me. I had to literally show up, go to the courthouse, go through the microfiche. I felt like I was like a detective or something for that. And I was never interested in detective stories or anything like that. But I was going through all this, and I learned so much from the little bit of transcripts that I could make out. It was really kind of a mess. But so when I went back there, I had let my sister, who I was staying with, because I go back, once a year anyway, but I let her know, that I remembered everything. So I'm at my sister's, and I'm like, this is crazy. The alley behind, because she lived on a street with an alley in between. So when you go into her garage, you go through the alley. That's the backyard. That was the same alley right there on that block where he tried to run me over the first time. I was like, I had never made this connection. I've been to my sister's house. It was so not there. I was like, I am literally, because I wanted to walk from my school through the alley. And I was like, I'm in the alley. This is crazy. Yeah. So she had a boxer at the time, and I brought the boxer with me because I was like, I need some protection. Like, I'm not going to just walk through this alley by myself. I'm going to bring a dog. But isn't that weird? So, like, it was right
Our
there.
Our brains are amazing in the way that
all those years.
Us.
I know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
She had bought that house 30 years before. I mean, I remember her buying the house. It never even dawned on me It was so blocked that it was right there.
Was there until you were ready to deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I started getting interested in trials and like true crime. I'm using quotes because I'm selective about it. But that's another thing I was never interested in. I would never watch a detective show or any of that. I mean, I was interested in law, but not criminal law. And now, I mean, I can't watch certain things about children and that kind of thing. That's just too much for me.
Mhm.
But I'm getting so much more. Um, so that's another example of like triggering, sort of, but it's not like I'm. What do they call it? There's a word for it. You're kind of not
Is it
numbing
like
yourself, but
exposure? Oh,
desensitizing,
desensitizing.
because
Yeah.
with PTSD you can become so overly sensitive, right? So, but again, that's not something that somebody said, okay, you should do this. The only thing a therapist ever told me to watch was, you need to watch some sad movies because I can't cry, because that's how I can't cry. I don't cry. I'm like, but because for whatever reason, but call, call, watch some sad movies to get yourself to cry. And I don't even know if I could do that. I was like, I don't want to cry.
Hey,
Why?
throw on Old Yeller
I
and
hate
see what
Oh
crying.
happens.
God, that was so good. Old Yeller. I remember going to Old Yeller when I was a kid, and I was devastated. To this day, I'm like, no, that's
Mhm.
too much.
Mhm.
Too much. Hey, Too Deep, True Crime. Hey, did you hear True Crime? And by the way, I will be back with my True Crime podcast very soon. I got released from the surgeon last Tuesday. So
Yay.
we're getting there. Anyway, so I was thinking, Jamie, that at the time I wasn't thinking about it, but now in retrospect, yeah. So a lot of things like taking the cat to the vet, it's triggering, right?
Yeah,
But
it traumatizes you a little bit. I get traumatized very easily though. Like if I have
oh,
like a
I do
negative,
too. Yep.
I like I'm a, like a natural avoider. Like I have like really severe avoidance.
Yeah.
But I told you like I need to overcome this. Like I can't keep being stressed about taking him to the vet. Like this is something. What if he gets really sick? I can't be paralyzed by this. I literally had
No.
that conversation with myself, and I was talking to you about it.
Yeah.
It's
But you
just
haven't
it's
been
yeah
so far. You've pulled it together. And
yeah.
the other thing is, everyone's traumatized bringing their cat to the vet. Like seriously.
Yeah.
So one of the things I mentioned was, I thought about, and you tell me what you think, Steve. Like, um, sometimes I think we can put too much pressure on ourselves to overcome something, when in reality, it's just something that we have to learn to deal with. We don't have to overcome everything, right? And because I think we can put so much pressure on ourselves, because I don't think, no matter how calm, cool, and collected you are, and how great your cat is or your dog, if they don't want to go to the vet, it's going to be a struggle. So we're never going to remove all struggles.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things like when I first started with my therapy and everything, I was talking about, you know, my whole mentality. I was trying to put on this perfect life, like that everybody saw this perfect person, like that, doing great at work, have two kids, perfect, marriage, all this stuff. And like my therapist looked at me, she goes, that must be exhausting.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I heard that. I was like, it's one of the most, like, it's, yeah, legitimately, it was one of the most exhausting things, because it's the furthest thing from the truth. Like, you've got two kids, you've got a pet, you've got a wife, you got, a stressful job. And yeah, there's going to be things that go wrong all the time with everybody. And
Yeah.
no, it's never going to be perfect. No, it's life. And so trying to figure out ways to understand and cut yourself some slack. Like that's one of the biggest things I've understood is, for me, it's understanding that like there's going to be days that just aren't good. Like legitimately there's going to be days that aren't good, and I can be okay with that. And whether like I function at work or if I need to take the day off, I mean, here's a perfect example. Going through divorce, and we're selling, like, just got an accepted offer on the house legitimately on Friday. That's a very exciting thing.
Yeah.
But it also brings up a crap ton of emotion from everything else. And so I was in there on Friday, like that happened Friday afternoon, and everybody's excited. Like, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, I feel a lot of grief from this. And so like, it's exciting on one level, but I feel a whole bunch of other things. And so in the past, what I would have done was push all those emotions down.
Yeah.
And so instead, I allowed myself just to feel sad and to feel that grief and to feel that pain and just kind of go through it all. And then Saturday morning, I was able to sleep on Friday night. Saturday morning, I felt a little bit better. And in everyday sense, it's been even better than that. And so it's understanding that those emotions happen to everybody, and that, you're not alone when it happens. But man, like if you just seclude yourself and don't let anybody else in, it's going to be a super, super lonely thing. And that's why I've been able to talk to people and really expand my circle a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, but it's been better. It's been good. It's been good for me. And, feeling the emotions is a weird thing for me. It still is 2 years later.
Yeah.
But it's so much more healthy and it's so much better for me that, I really can't tell enough people about it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I'm a little bit like a guy that way. I mean, as far as not crying and not, it's like
I didn't say I don't cry. I did not say I don't cry.
You don't. But a lot of guys.
I do. No, I do.
I wish I could. I don't know. Maybe. I am definitely learning things all the time, and I continue to grow, I guess you want to say. Maybe there's hope for me. To become a crier, I think things are sappy. Like I don't go to I'm sorry, my cat's doing something scary right now, so I'm a little distracted. I don't go to like sappy love movies and things like that. I'm like, sappy. I don't know. Like this guy took me to see the Titanic back in the day when I was dating, and he was like bawling, and I'm like, that is so stupid. Like this is the dumbest film I've ever seen. And I didn't rub his face in it or anything, but I was just like, that's sappy. So I don't know, but I need help with that.
Have you ever tried the like the service members coming back and surprising their families?
Oh,
like go on YouTube and check that out. Like every time I sit there, I'm like, I'm not crying. I'm not crying. Or the pets that see their Marines come back and they don't recognize them after like 2 years, and all of a sudden they catch the scent.
Then they realize,
and then they go just insane.
I just saw one of those. Yeah, I saw one of the. I'll get a little bit choked up. I got a little choked up. Actually felt sick to my stomach when I found out Andy Murray hurt himself, because I just know how much preparation goes into that game and all of that. So I'm more emotional than I used to be. I'm getting there, but I did just see one with the pet. I think I'm more inclined, like if something happens to an animal than a person.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because
same.
Yeah, people to me are kind of. So Nonomi says, uncovering the things, though it can be painful, it also eliminates the unknown, which stops the mind's speculation, and that can be a relief. So true.
Yeah.
Very wise. Yeah. Pape's here with the jokes. I love it. Hallmark movies. Okay. So 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 Jamie, when when um when you get home from the vet, like Saturday, you got home and you accomplished that, and you talked to the doctor and you did grown up mommy things. Because I tell her now she's a mom.
I'm a
This is
mother.
why I'd be a terrible mom too.
I'm a
I'm
whole
so glad I
mother.
didn't have kids. I'm so glad I didn't have kids. Glad for them that I didn't have kids, for unknown kids. Did you feel proud of yourself? Did you feel,
Uh,
or did
I
you just feel
got
tired?
I canceled all my plans and I went to get my favorite food and I sat in front of the TV for the rest of the weekend. I feel like that was enough
Yeah,
for me for like the whole week. It was
yeah.
very exhausting after. I was really tired but super relieved and proud of myself, which is very rare for me to feel proud of myself, but I really did feel proud.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Yeah, it can be. It can wear you out. That can be enough. It can be enough. Last week with my cat's emergency was way more than enough.
That was intense.
Way
Yeah,
more than enough.
you're
So
oh,
yeah, just briefly, she spit up Tuesday morning. No, the week before. Was it last? Yeah, it was the week before Tuesday. She spit up just a little bit of liquidy stuff, and then she seemed okay, and she went to the bathroom, and I just went to clean it up, and I found a like 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch sharp shard of plastic in her spit up. And it was the color of her. Well, and I was like, what is this? Did she spit this up? Nah. And I wasn't really, I couldn't fathom that she had eaten that. And the way she spit it up, I knew it had gone all the way down to her stomach and then out. So it would have been eating the night before. Then I went in the kitchen and I noticed another piece very similar to it in her food bowl. And I'm like, what? And it was the same plastic as her automatic feeder. So I'm like, okay, the automatic feeder broke and there's plastic, and I got to take this thing apart right away and find out if there's more in her, because she would have to have it. Yeah, it'd be very dangerous. And so I took the thing apart and nothing was broken. So then I'm like, okay. And I had to go to the hospital for my surgery, for my last post-surgery procedure. So I had to have 3 like surgical procedures after my surgery. It was very minor, but in the office type thing. And I'm like, should I go to change my appointment? What? And I took the thing apart, and I'm not very mechanically inclined. Okay. But it wasn't that complicated. I, unscrewed a couple things and I took it apart, and I could not find any cracks, any breakage, nothing. And I'm like, this is so weird, because now I don't know if she's got more in her stomach. And this is really dangerous. It was really, really sharp. Both pieces were just it was like glass. And because it's plastic, but it's like hard as glass. So I had my friend who's very mechanically inclined, and she took it apart and she's like, it's not broken. So evidently, some pieces were left in there from the manufacturing floor, and they were probably in there for a long time. And she recently changed kibble, and the size of the kibble was larger, so it worked their way out. But I still, to this day, have no idea how much she ingested. I found another really small piece, really sharp little triangular piece, like 2 days later on the floor. And I mean, it wasn't there before. It's like, I don't know where they're coming from. So it was very traumatic, and it involved really serious stuff, because she could have died. She could have had to have surgery. It was just awful. And that took me all last week to kind of like calm myself down, because I really wasn't sure she was out of the woods until like Saturday, and she still isn't eating very much, but she had to poop a few times and things like that to make, and so she had imaging and stuff to make sure, and there was nothing, thankfully, in her stomach. If they would have found anything in her stomach, they would have had it gone in there. So there are going to be things like that, Jamie, and with a cat or with a dog, they do things, or things happen. You can be as careful as you are, because we know, Jamie, you're really careful, but things can happen, and you're going to get through them. You will.
Well, now I know what kind of mother I would be, a neurotic.
Oh, I would be a total.
Yeah, I need to overcome that, because I don't want to be crazy. I need to relax.
Okay. Yeah, no, same here. I always said I couldn't be a mother because I would never let my children out of the house, especially with, and I used to say that, but I didn't remember what happened to be. But now we know why I said that, right?
Yeah,
I'd be afraid for them. And the world is much scarier now. So,
yeah.
Is it hard, Steve, to let your kids out of the house? Nope, I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. It's like work all over again. Yeah, I mean it's terrifying at times. Like legitimately, I'm known. I don't like guns at all. Never liked them at all, and so seeing all the school shootings that happen all the time,
yeah,
that terrifies me to no end. Of like, it takes one kid that was bullied, or one kid that has parents that don't know how to talk to them about mental health, or it takes one, and if it's in your neighborhood, you never know when it's going to happen. And so that's one of the things that freaks me out to no end. And yeah, I'm probably more helicopter parent than I want to be, but at some level I don't really care. I'd rather be a little bit overprotective than the underprotective, and something crazy happens. So, but
right.
Yeah, it can be scary. But I mean, the other end of it is whenever they're around, I get snuggles, I get hugs, I get "I love you, Dad," I get all the like fun, amazing things that come with it. So it's when it comes down to it, I wouldn't change it for the world, but absolutely can be terrifying at times.
Do you feel like your PTSD inclination affects your parenting? You have a real gift now to give to your children, by the way, by going through this. And there are so many people, and I think in the Wisconsin culture particularly, that would have just kept on drowning their feelings.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So hats off to you for that, for sure. But it makes you a better parent too, right?
Oh, for sure. It's been I've seen the changes in 2 years in my relationship with the kids.
Wow.
There was a huge gap between me and my son. It just we weren't seeing eye to eye, and he was 3 at the time, and we still there was a gap. It was noticeable. And since I've been able to change and understand and really figure out ways to communicate with him, as opposed to just talking to him, yelling at him, doing those things, getting down on his level, and really understanding what he's going through, and being able to talk to them and be honest with them. Be like, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at you. That was my fault. This is why I was frustrated. This is what was happening. And so it's really done that. And I think, to me, me and my ex are both in therapy, and we both have talked to the kids about it. And so they understand that it's an important thing. And so hopefully that, when the time comes, I'm sure they'll need therapy for themselves. I have no doubt about that, but that they'll feel comfortable coming to us and asking us questions. So my daughter is very, very inquisitive and wants to know all sorts of stuff. So she asks questions about it, and I'll answer it to her level about what she can hear and what she's ready to hear. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's made me about 1,000,000 times a better parent.
Yeah, I bet. That's phenomenal. Well, Jamie, what would you like to say to anybody out there who's thinking that a pet would help them with their emotional challenges, whatever they are?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you guys, you're not alone. Don't struggle alone. Reach out, even if you don't feel like it. And I struggle with that. I struggle with reaching out, but you don't have to struggle alone. Um, Maybe you can start with a pet, but definitely be financially ready to get an emotional support animal. Make sure you're educating yourself and preparing yourself. Find a mentor. Do a lot of research before you do it. I gotta like make those disclaimers, but absolutely do it. It's been super therapeutic for me to have Moon. He's literally saved my life. He came to me at a really dark point in my life. I was struggling with a lot of really dark thoughts right before I got him, and he's really helped me with having structure. Like they need routine. I need routine. I hate routine. I hate structure, but it's good for me. So he's helped me in so many ways that I can't even like count. And he's been truly therapeutic for me, and I don't struggle with loneliness as much anymore. If I have a hard time at work, which I do a lot, I come home and I forget because I see his cute little face. He's meowing at me. He's hungry, and I don't care about anything because I just want to take care of him, and that's just the big impact that he has had.
That's amazing. So there's something bigger than or something more important than yourself. Sometimes we can put our own interests aside to take and care of, nurture someone else, whether it's a pet or a friend or a family member, and that can be really rewarding. But we always get back to our own needs, right? Right. We should always make sure we get back to our
Yeah,
own needs.
it's
Yeah.
one thing for sure. Like especially like even as a parent, but a friend, a coworker, whatever. Like you're not going to be able to help anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right.
That's one of the biggest things. Like I know that in order for me to be the best dad that I can be, I've got to make sure that my head is right and that I'm taking care of myself. That way I know I can take the best care of my kids when they're with me. So yeah, it's huge to make sure you're taking care of yourself so you can definitely help other people.
And Jamie, Pappy says Jamie rules. Jamie, do you feel like you're still able to take care of yourself? Are you taking care of yourself better now?
I need a reminder. My therapist is really good at reminding me that every Monday we have that conversation.
Yeah. And Too Deep says, to being a caretaker of anyone does wonders for your self-worth. Yeah, and it's still new. I mean, you've only had him few months now. Yeah.
We're learning each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. And Pappy says, as Packer fans, we'll always need therapy is inevitable. That's very true. It's so true.
Can't argue with them.
Jamie, do you think one day you could mentor someone else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do that a lot with my kids already. I do have a part-time job when I teach kids, and I always try to be a good mentor to them, a good example. I talk about mental health and anxiety, and I make them do breathing exercises with me. And I always try to encourage them to be open and honest with everything. Even if they don't do their homework, they gotta tell me, and it's okay because it's okay to be honest. You're not gonna get in trouble if you're honest. I always try to really instill that because a lot of times with that kids can have. So yeah, I try to be a mentor to the kids, to the younger generation. For sure. This world is not getting any easier.
No, it's getting harder. I agree. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but it was, like I said, it was Tuesday, a week ago, Tuesday, like 10 days ago. And I got up that day and I was like, I had an appointment with my doctor, with my PTSD doctor, that I forgot about. And I had so it was almost the same time as the surgery appointment, the surgeon appointment. And so that morning, and this is when this all happened. And I texted him and said, "Oh, I just realized I I have to go to the doctor. I don't know if I said anything about the cat or if she had thrown up yet, but I was kind of stressed already because there's other things going on that are really stressing me out, and like big time. And I was like, oh, I need that appointment so badly. And I said, I was sorry. And did he have any other times? And he didn't. And I don't know what happened, but somehow or another, he found time. He must have had a cancellation, and he called me that afternoon. Wow. That was so like the biggest gift I could have had that day, because I just was able to talk about the other situation and, the letter. I have one more appointment with him before the commissioner and all that. So it really helps to have that. What a doctor like to do that, to remember, like I said, do you have any other times or whatever? And the appointment for the post-surgery was also extremely stressful because it was sinus surgery, and it's like they're putting these things like way up your head, and it was awful. So I was stressed about that. What a day. Anyway, okay. So speaking of needing did you want to offer any, do you find yourself mentoring people now, Steve, apart from your children?
Yeah, I mean, I'm become very open about, therapy and what it's done for me. And so, I've talked with my boss about it, like, because he was very helpful with me in trying to figure out when I was in the midst of the divorce and figuring it all out. He legitimately told me, like, he helped me through it. And he wasn't big into therapy by any means, but we've talked a lot and been able to rely on each other quite a bit and really talk about like personal stuff. And so he's been really influential with that. And so he actually is talking about starting therapy himself, which is really cool. And then I told you guys before we started, but my company did a whole mental health awareness month for May. And so we had all sorts of content that was created. And so I actually hosted a coffee chat beforehand, about a half hour, and it just talked about my experience. And so it was really, really well received. A couple hundred people attended, which was more than I thought it was going to be.
That's amazing.
So it was really cool. But I had multiple messages from guys just talking about, their experiences with either divorce or mental health and therapy and everything. And it was just really cool. So I was able to have some really, quality conversations with people that I had never talked to before in the company. And so, yeah, it was just, it was a really cool thing. And so, like, I've talked about it before on the podcast as well, but anytime anybody has questions, whether it's about football or just need to talk about life, that's something I'm always down for.
I love that about you. And for those who don't know Steve's podcast, the podcast that he's got two partners. That's how you end almost all your podcasts, by letting people know that they can reach out to you for anything, which is great, even though it's a football podcast.
Yeah. And I've had a couple people do it where they want to talk about life. And, we talk and I'm like, hey, not a therapist here, but, you just need to get some stuff off your chest, then do that. Like, I'm here to listen, won't judge, and hopefully it helps you feel a little bit better.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, transitioning on, if you're ready. Any other final thoughts, Jamie, before we transition on? I know you have some resources that you want to share. I did find a new YouTube channel that is called, where did it go? Sorry. It's got a really cool little name. It's a psychiatrist. So and he's in Britain. He works with the NHS there. And of course, now I can't find him right now. His channel name. His channel name is A Psych for Sore Minds. So cute.
Yeah, words.
Really cute. I found him recently, or YouTube helped me find him. YouTube found me. I don't know how that works, but it was a suggestion, and I'm really loving his channel, A Psych for Sore Minds, and I'll put that in the show notes after the show. And if you're listening on the podcast, in the description. And Jamie, I think you had a channel you wanted to suggest that you liked, right?
Yeah. Before, I just wanted to tell Steve that the message is so important just because you're and we just really need to encourage men to their feelings and emotions. It's something that's still taboo and very stigmatized. So the work that you're doing, just you speaking out, I love it.
Oh,
Huge.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But if you are a gamer and you are part of the gaming community, you might have heard about him, maybe not. If you look up Healthy Gamer GG, this is a psychiatrist who studied in India, and so he mixes Eastern medicine with Western medicine. He's a psychiatrist, and he's really been really helpful. I watched a lot of mental health content, but he's probably the channel that's really made the most difference in the way that I think and fixing a lot of my cognitive distortions, a lot of my thought process that's really distorted. He's really good. His population target population is like gamers and streamers. He like brings on streamers and he kind of like lets them talk and he gives them like pointers and just kind of helps them get to the bottom of certain things that they're going through. And it's sometimes he brings just regular people and a lot of this stuff is really relatable and he gives a lot of good resources and tools and how to deal with. He's like there to literally heal the gaming community and just people on YouTube, and I think he's doing really good work. His name is Dr. K. He has a name that I can't pronounce, but his name is Dr. K. You can look him up. Healthy Gamer GG, which is a good game.
All right.
If you're a gamer.
I'll find the link and drop that in the description too.
So put it on the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. And Steve, you had some great suggestions last year. Do you remember what those were? Yeah, because those are still pretty valid. Or
yeah. It's I mean, the way that I think what we talked about last time was one of them was my breathing techniques. It's I think 478, 487, I forget one of the two, but basically it's where you take the tip of your tongue, you put it to the two front teeth, and then you take in your breath for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 or 8 seconds, and then you breathe it out for the opposite of like 7 or 8. And that one really helps me a lot. That's one of the things that I've really, I'm stressed out. I'm freaking out, whatever. Something happens with my kids, something happens at work where I just like my mind's going crazy. Like I need to take that step away for a second, and you can repeat it as many times as you need to until your mind kind of calms down. And that's one that's really big for me. And then the other one is the type of therapy that I do. It's the EMDR stuff, and so it's the light therapy that helps go through old memories and helps rewrite them in your brain to help you have different reactions to things. And so that's been really big for me. Like that was part of what I did today in my therapy. And so still doing it. I don't do it as much because I really got down to a lot of the core issues that were going on with me about 6 months ago. That's kind of where I had my big breakthroughs. And so it's become a lot more just talk therapy and understanding where I've come and like the reactions I'm having. But every once in a while, like it's still something that's needed for me. And so, it's kind of whatever comes up in my life. And, this time it was how I was reacting to certain situations with my ex-wife. And so it was I was sitting there, I'm like, I really don't like the way that I'm doing this. And she's like, okay, let's get into it. And it's the one thing I really like about it is just because that's where it starts isn't where my mind always goes. And so that wasn't the thing that I really needed to figure out was my reactions. It was what I was thinking about myself in those situations. And so once I started understanding that, then I can have a better mental, so now I feel like more prepared for the next time that situation comes up, and we'll see how it goes. And so it's been unbelievably helpful for me. It's helped me fix a lot of the relationships that I'd had in the past. And if you ever have questions about it, to me, it's been life altering.
Oh yeah. You've done EMDR, right? EMDR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jamie, you've done
that? I want to.
You
try
haven't
it.
done? Okay.
I haven't done it. I do need it. That would be really helpful.
It's funny. I don't know if I remembered if I mentioned this last year, I've mentioned that I did have that when less than a year. Let me think. How long ago was it? I'm trying to get my dates right. No, it wasn't less than a year. It was probably about a year and a half into my severe like flashbacks, all that, and I was getting situated in my life and retraced my steps and found out the guy was, in prison, all this stuff. And then I think I mentioned this last year, that I lost Drew to a ski accident. So I was really traumatized, and I still wasn't anywhere near where I needed to be with the PTSD. And so I went to a trauma grief type specialist, and she suggested the EMDR. And I was in such a state back then that I was afraid to do it. I was just so scared of everything. I was just so scared. But I did do it, and it was very helpful. Everyone has a little bit of different technique. It was the light, and she had something on my fingers or something.
Yeah, you'll hold some sort of vibrations in each hand, because it's about both sides of your brain.
Right.
And so for me, at least the way that my therapist does it, she's got a light bar that's in front of me, and so it's your eyes track it back and forth, and then the way the light goes, there's also vibrations in your hand.
Right.
When I was doing it like Zoom stuff, they didn't have that ability, so it was closing my eyes and it was tapping left and right on my legs. And if that wasn't working, in order to switch it up, stand up in your chair and do that. I would like cross my arms and tap like this. And so, I mean, yeah, there's different variations through all of it, but it was amazing.
Yeah, so that's right. Thanks for refreshing my memory. So it's engaging both sides of the brain so that it kind of, you get into some kind of self-regulation. I just was so afraid of everything at that time. You just made me think of that. I don't know why I didn't think of that last year, but it's nothing to be afraid of, and a very useful tool with therapists. And of course, Pappy, bringing the humor. EMDR, eat massive donuts regularly. That can work too.
That can work.
That's the only EMDR I've done.
I've done that the last year, and boy, I've got some weight to lose.
I think I told you guys this last time, but I like the way that she described it the first time I ever met her. I thought she was nuts. I was like, what? Like, you're gonna help rewire my brain about old like the traumatic events that happened. Like, okay, that makes sense. Like, that can happen. But I'm glad I took the leap, and it's been awesome.
I was just so afraid of reliving, like going through the events again. I think that was what I was afraid of. Yeah, like what would happen, and it was bad.
I mean, it can be very intense. It really can. It brings emotions to the forefront of things you haven't dealt with or things that have been buried, and they come out in different. It comes out in different forms of. I mean, I had my first ever panic attack after a session because I brought up a whole bunch of stuff I had never wanted to ever think about, and it all came up, and but you work through it, and as long as you stick with it, to me it's been awesome.
Right. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember if I had to take a anti-anxiety medicine to do it, or if it was like you have it if you need it type of thing. I can't remember what the situation was, but
normally from what she has told me is that you want to not be on like anti-anxiety stuff just because you want all the emotions to come out. Like that's the whole point, is confronting all of it. Which makes it not easy at the time, but if you can work yourself through that stuff. I mean, you definitely can be on anti-anxiety meds and still do it.
Right.
She told me it can be a little bit more difficult, but it's still definitely an option.
Yeah, you probably need more sessions or whatever. I don't remember there being well, I just was afraid. That was the emotion, was deep, deep fear. That was
that's a big emotion.
that was a big one.
Yeah.
So, okay. So back to needing anti-anxiety medications for football as a Packer. So, you had a great, and by the way, Ron, thank you. Thank you, Ronald. Thank you for reminding us. So just again, by way of reminder, we're a little off script tonight because this is our annual mental health check-in for Packers fans. For NFL fans, it doesn't matter what team.
Sure.
What team. And today, tennis fans evidently really hate seeing that. I was really traumatized when Damar Hamlin went down on that Monday night. I was traumatized for that night was horrible for me. Yeah, I'm a pretty sensitive person with certain things. Did you? So Jamie has a podcast called Stigma Breakers. She's been on a little bit of a pause, but she's going to be back, right, Jamie?
Maybe.
She thinks so. And Ron wanted to mention your Stigma Breakers podcasts. And again, Steve is on Pack-A-Day, which is daily. You can find Andy Herman on YouTube, but Steve's crew, Steve, Dusty, and Sarah, happen to be my favorite. I'm sorry, everyone else, but I have a favorite. Always have.
Dusty, I said hi.
I will absolutely do that.
Oh, he'll be listening. Dusty is one of our listeners. So hi, Dusty. Pack-A-Day on Wednesdays for Steve's podcast. So did you want to talk a little bit more before we go? You had a superlative regarding
yeah. I mean, it was just a shout out to Matt Schneidman. He has the Packers at reporter for The Athletic. He's joined our podcast now. I think it's now 3 ever since he got hired. Like as soon as he got hired, I reached out to him on Twitter, like within a day or two, and he was like, "Oh, absolutely, I'd love to join your podcast." And I just sat there like dumbfounded. I was like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to reply at all, but okay."
Okay.
So he responded right away. I think we've had him on now 3 or 4 times total. And he's always he's awesome. He's humble. Him. He's humble, and he brings such a different perspective than some of the the wily veterans, the Jason Wildes, the Rob Domofskis who have been there forever. And he's younger. I don't want to be mean, but he's more fun. He's got some he wears sweatsuits, he wears Crocs and sandals, like just random ass stuff. But like he's just a lot of fun, and things I can't say on this podcast, but he gave us some off the record stories that he's heard, and man, it was so much fun. Like we were kids in candy shop, just sitting there wide eyed listening to every story he had to tell. So it was a lot of fun listening to him. And he said he's even open to doing sometimes during the middle of the season. So I mean, he lives in Green Bay, so he doesn't have a lot to do during the season. So hopefully we'll have him on another time.
I want to reach out to him for our podcast too. He's so fun. His tracksuit, his wild tracksuit. I don't think he's doing the tracksuits anymore.
I think that has stopped. Yeah.
For those listening who don't know who he is, especially if you're not a Packers fan, he is a New Yorker. He's a reporter for The Athletic, as Steve mentioned, but he's a New Yorker. I think his alma mater was I
want to say it was Syracuse.
Syracuse, yes, thank you.
That's right.
And I like New Yorkers. I really do. They're my favorite. I really do. So, well, that's great. And so, any final thoughts before we log off for the night? We've been going for, oh my goodness, 2 hours. I love our chats. I love it. Organic. Anything else you two want to add, Jamie, Steve, before we?
Not for me.
I would. It's something that Jamie kind of talked about, but it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Of just guys and mental health. Like it's a really difficult thing. There's a reason that men's suicide rate is twice the rate of women's. We're programmed to not talk about this stuff. It's the way that we're brought up as kids. You see your dad as the rock, as the the person who brings in the money, and like that's their job. is to do that and make sure the family's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it's really important to kind of recognizing all these things. Like, yeah, it's okay for guys to have emotions. Like, you're a human. You're supposed to have them just as much as women do. And finding people that can support you is a really huge thing. So, again, I've said it, you got my Twitter DMs. Those are always open. And if you ever need a person to chat with, whatever, or somebody to recommend somebody to talk to, I'm always open. So if you can't, and for any of the women that are listening to, like, if you've got a man in your life that you think is struggling, it's such a delicate thing, because I'm pretty sure my ex-wife knew I needed therapy. She knew it, but you can't push that person into something, because at that point in my life, I wasn't ready for it. You can't just push that person into making that decision. It's got to be something that comes from them. So, it's a tough line, and it's horrible. It sucks to hear that type of thing, but I mean, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's kind of the thing that I've always said when it comes to that. So, I'm always open to talking to anybody that wants to about it.
That's awesome, Steve. I love that about you. It's very generous. And I do think that it also helps us when we help others. And we learn when we help others as well. So
for sure.
Jamie, I'm super proud of you. Everyone in the audience, thank you so much for being here. Those who are in the chat or just listening, we love you. We care about you, and reach out to any one of us. Certainly Steve is a very good listener and has a great perspective. And all of our contact information, if it's not already in the description, will be updated, whether you're listening on the podcast or here on YouTube. So that's fantastic. And Ron says Jamie is the greatest. We love you, Jamie. She is the best. It's been really just a privilege to help you get your cat. I did not expect that when I sent you the picture of him. She was like immediately in love. I mean, he is super cute. You got to admit, he's very special. And I'm glad it worked out. It took a couple months, but we got him for you. And you can do this. You're doing great. You're a good mom.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and Pappy says, thank you, Dawn, Jamie, and Steve, for making 2 hours feel like a beautiful 2 minutes. Aw, it's so sweet.
That's amazing. That is a really big compliment.
Yeah, we love you, Pappy. Thank you so much. Well, I am not going to do our regular ending, because Matt usually does that part. So we're just going to say, hey, thanks again for joining us. We'll be back next week, and next week is going to be a little bit different. Also annual, and it's going to be Big B and Joey from the Underage Packers podcast. And last year we did the top 10 content creators, and so we're going to update that for a new top 10 for this year. So we're excited about that. So hang on for that if you're interested. And again, I mentioned I will be back with my true crime. I put that in air quotes for those of you who are not watching, because it's not really true crime, but whatever it is that I do, I'll be back with that very soon. And I believe Katie will be joining me soon as well. So with that, we wish you a good night. You guys, if you can hang on, we'll see you in the green room. Thanks for being here. It was great. And there goes we see him in the background. Bye, Pepe, my little grandkid. Oh, he heard me. Pepe. Sorry. With that, we wish you a good night. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.